Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts. Today we're going to do something that I haven't done in quite a while. Many of you might have seen, actually it was quite some time ago, a couple years ago, some of my journal making videos. Y'all, I love making journals. Through our move and leading up to our move, I have not had time to make any journals and I have missed it. Well, we're getting ready to gear up for the holiday season, right? Christmas is just a couple months away, and many of you are looking for homemade gift ideas to give to your coworkers, your loved ones, your friends. Perhaps some of you are vendors in craft shows, flea markets, farmers markets. Maybe you have a booth in a consignment shop, and you're looking for ideas to make to fill up with your inventory. And maybe some of you get commissioned to make items from people's clothing, like quilts and bears and bunnies and pillows. Well, this is just one more idea that you can add to your arsenal of things to offer, because wouldn't this be lovely? A quilted journal made with a loved one's clothing. Now, you don't have to use clothing, and I'm going to walk through today making this journal with you using just regular quilter's cotton. But just keep in mind, if you are someone who likes making sentimental items for family members, yourself, and for your clients, that this little journal would be a great little item to offer, right? We're doing paper piecing today, y'all. Very, very simple. So if you're new to paper piecing, this would be a great introductory into paper piecing. Very simple paper piecing today, and we're sewing through the paper today. I don't usually do that, but I'm going to talk about some reasons why sewing through the paper might be helpful in your paper piecing projects. So I'm going to walk you through making the cover, and then towards the end I'm going to show you 2 ways to finish this journal using some craft supplies that you might have already on hand. Okay? Let's go ahead and go down to the cutting mat, and I'm going to show you the things that you need to make the quilted cover. So let's take a look at the things that you'll need to make this cover. I have a PDF pattern. Y'all, this pattern is available in my Etsy shop. There is a link down below in the description box that'll lead you right to it, or you can visit my shop by going to Etsy and searching Lisa Capen Quilts. It's a PDF pattern, and it looks just like this. The front page is going to tell you the things to make the cover, and then the other craft supplies you need to make the journal or to finish the journal. So let's just flip through. Just to let you know, I am horrible at giving written paper piecing instructions, so I'm not going to confuse you or myself trying to type them out. This video, I'm going to walk you step by step on paper piecing the cover, okay? I have just found that I just make it way too complicated when I try to type out those instructions. So in the PDF, you're going to find 2 of these sheets. These are the papers that you're going to use to actually make the cover. If you're making multiple journals, all you have to do is print just this page several times. You don't have to print the whole PDF pattern just to get multiples of this page, right? But you'll need 2 of them to make one journal cover. And then you have a template to pre-cut your pieces for the journal cover, right? So you'll cut this out on the line, and you'll cut these papers out on the outside line, okay? So go ahead and do that. Cut both of these pieces right on that outside line, and this is your template. This journal cover is jelly roll friendly, so you can use this template lined up on a jelly roll to cut your pieces. So that would make it quick and easy, wouldn't it? All right, so there's the PDF pattern. We're going to put that off to the side, and I'll cut those out off camera. You don't have to sit and watch me do that. You're going to need some prepared binding, and all of the measurements that I'm showing you of these pieces are on the very first page of this pattern, okay? So I have my prepared binding, just waiting for that part. You'll need 1 strip of fabric for the binding of your journal cover, right? This is just the middle part of your journal cover. And that's going to go right there, joining the two paper pieced sections. You're going to need 10 pieces of fabric. You can coordinate them. You can use 10 totally different pieces of fabric. Just get creative and have fun, right? So here's my 10 pieces. I used my cutting template to cut them out so they're all ready to go. You're going to need, just scooting this stuff over. You're going to need 2 pieces of fusible interfacing. Now this comes in all kinds of weights, right? Thicknesses or stiffness of interfacing. Today I'm using 2 pieces of Pelon P44F. It's my staple fusible interfacing for my t-shirt quilts, and I carry bolts of it on hand. And so whenever I need a fusible interfacing, this is the one I use. Now you might have something totally different and that will work fine too. If you have one that is stiffer, just keep in mind that it's going to affect the stiffness of your journal cover, okay? This, I would say, is optional. Let's take a look at this cover. This cover was made without any interfacing, and so it is very soft and quilt-like. Okay, this one does not have any interfacing at all, so you certainly don't have to use it if you don't want to. If you want a little bit more body and a firmness to your journal cover, that would be the reason to use this. I like using a thinner quilt batting for my journal covers, and so I have a piece of Warm and Natural for the batting, and then a piece of backing fabric. And this is going to be the inside of your journal right there. Okay, so those are the materials you'll need. Now we're doing paper piecing, so you might find it helpful to have an 1/4 inch ruler. It has the little lip that kind of hooks right onto your paper when it's folded. That's handy. But you don't need that. You could have just a regular ruler and a rotary cutter, and of course your sewing machine and all those things, right? Okay, so let me go ahead and get these little templates cut out, and we're gonna start sewing our cover. And we're back. I have my 2 pages cut out on that outside line, and you'll notice my papers are pre-folded. You might find it helpful in the paper piecing process to go ahead and pre-fold on the solid line that divides each one of your pieces, okay? And I've already sorted out my 10 fabrics. I want my 2 sides of my journal cover to be the same, so I have 2 stacks of fabrics in the order that I want to add them to my cover. So many of you who have seen my paper piecing projects know that usually I don't sew through the paper. So this is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to if you watch my paper piecing videos. Okay, but it's super simple and I'm going to walk you through it. So we're going to start with the first side of our cover. And what I'm going to do is just flip this with the right side facing down. And you'll see, because we have pre-folded each one of those lines, that you have a good idea of where each one of the positions is going to be. So we're going to start with our first fabric at the top, and we're going to bring this in. Now the important part, and I'm sorry, you might hear my bird is kind of chatty in the background today. The important part when placing these fabrics, especially the very first one, is that the fabric extends beyond the sides and the top of this piece of paper and extends beyond this fold. Okay, so it's real simple. We're going to place this first fabric with the right side facing up, just right over top, just like that. And then we're going to bring in the second fabric, and we're going to place this one with the right side facing down, right on top of that first fabric. Okay, now you might want to pin these layers in place to keep them exactly situated just like this, but I'm just going to carefully lift up the paper and pinch it with my fingers and bring it over to the sewing machine. So on the right side, this is what you see. The fabric extends beyond all the paper sides and beyond that folded solid line. So we're going to bring it over to the sewing machine just like this, with the paper side facing up. Now, one thing to keep in mind since we're sewing through paper is you're going to want to lower that stitch length. I am going to lower mine to a 1.6, and we're just using a straight stitch. And the shorter stitch length is going to make removing this printer paper super easy when we're ready to get to that part, okay? So let's come on over to the sewing machine. Here we are. I have my open toe foot on, so hopefully you can see a little bit better, and I'm going to try to make that not fuzzy. Hold on just a second. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Lots of background noise, y'all. We have neighbors cutting grass. I have the bird in the background. So I apologize now for that. Okay, so I have my open toe foot on. I'm hoping you can see. Again, my stitch length is a 1.6. We're bringing in this first piece, and we are sewing directly on the line. So we don't have to follow any 1/4 inch seam allowance rules, and all we need to pay attention to is sewing right on that line. Now, I like to start sewing off of the paper in the extra fabric bit that is on the side, okay? And when we get to the end, I will sew all the way off the paper and then cut the thread. All right, and you know what? To speed it up, I'm going to go ahead and just bring in the next bit, lining up that first fabric, lining up the second fabric. Of course, today we have leaf blowing going on across the street. Maybe the microphone doesn't pick that up though. All right, so here is, pardon me, here's the second part. And chain piecing like this will speed up making the journal. So if you have a lot of journals to make, the chain piecing makes it much faster. All right, see that? I stopped once I got into that fabric bit on the other side. And we're just going to bring this right on over to the pressing board. And I'm going to separate and cut that little thread that connects those two pieces. I'm going to warm up my iron. And while that's warming up, let's go ahead and fold back on the line that we just sewed, right? And we're going to have a little bit of extra fabric in our seam allowance. So now's a great time to go ahead and remove any of that extra fabric on that first join. And it could just be a slight little tiny bit like that. I'm going to do that on both of them and give my iron a really good chance to warm up. It really is just a tiny little bit. Okay, so we're gonna place our paper facing down on to our pressing board, and we're just gonna flip over this second fabric, the one on top. And I like to finger press that really well. You could use a seam roller or you can press it. And I'm just gonna bring my iron over and press it. Now, one of the reasons why sometimes you might want to use paper in your paper piecing projects is that paper is really acting as a stabilizer as we're piecing all of these sections together, right? And sewing through the paper stabilizes those seams right in place. Okay, so we're going to let that cool off for a second. Let me bring this first one we pressed over. And before we add the third fabric, I'm going to go ahead and fold over the paper and trim this fabric right there, leaving 1/4 inch. So if you don't have this add 1/4 ruler, just use a regular ruler and measure over 1/4 inch. Leave yourself 1/4 inch. Hold on a second, y'all. My dad's coming. Okay, we're back. My dad came. So we have our fabric trimmed, leaving 1/4 inch. And now we're ready to just bring in our third fabric, right? So let's just open these up. Here's our third fabric. We're going to lay that with the right side facing down, matching it up to our freshly trimmed raw edge of the second fabric. Like that. And like that. Now we can bring these pieces over to the sewing machine. So I'm just going to pinch them in place. Bring it right on over. And we're sewing these two seams. That bird, he knows I'm making a video today. Okay, let's bring this over. I'm going to just cut that little connecting thread where we chain pieced those pieces. And because we cut our extra fabric of piece number 2 to 1/4 inch, we don't have to trim just yet, right? We can flip this third fabric over. And I like to just finger press that really well. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for the second piece too. And we're going to press these two seams. We're going to trim the extra, leaving just 1/4 inch. Very, very simple paper piecing. So if you're a beginner to paper piecing, this would be a great project to sort of see how things go and get used to flipping and cutting and adding, right? All right, we're going to go ahead and bring in fabric number 4, and we're going to lay that to our freshly cut piece there and there. I'm going to go sew those two seams and we'll come back. All right, coming back from sewing those two seams. We're just repeating all the steps over and over again. Yeah, my dad came in to tell me that Harlan is chasing a chicken in the front yard, which it must be on the other side of the house because I can't see him. Not our chicken, just a random chicken. He's trying to catch it. Which is a common occurrence in our neighborhood, just random chickens show up. We think, actually, we know who this particular chicken belongs to, so he's trying to catch it and bring it back down the street. Our little baby chicks are growing every single day. They no longer look like little puffballs. They actually look like little baby chickens. All right, we're going to trim this fabric of the piece number 4. One thing about paper piecing, sewing through the paper, is it eliminates the need to use the glue stick, right? So your fingers aren't getting glue all over your fingertips. And yeah, everything is going to stay put because sewing through the paper just holds everything right in place. All right, we're going to add our 5th fabric right down here at the bottom, right side facing down, and I'm going to go sew those 2 seams, and we'll be right back. All right, coming back, let's cut this last connecting thread. We're going to press these last 2 seams. And actually it goes together really quickly. I think if you had all of these papers pre-cut out and your fabric's already pre-cut and you were ready to just sit at the sewing machine and sew, you could do multiple of these in just a short amount of time. Okay, so adding our 5th fabric, we're done adding fabrics, and you'll see the fabric extends beyond all edges of the paper. So we're going to actually go ahead and trim this up now, and a larger ruler might be something that's handy. We're going to trim right to the paper's edge, but more importantly, using this inside solid line, line that up to a 1/4 inch mark on your ruler to trim off anything that goes beyond, right? So let me just show you. Let me actually move the camera so you see hopefully more of what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna, it might be a little bit harder to see this way. I'm going to line up this inside solid line to the 1/4 inch mark on my ruler. And we're just trimming everything on all 4 sides. So once you trim all of the 4 sides on both pieces, we can reveal the nicely perfect paper pieced front and backs of our journal, right? And everything is perfect and lines up perfectly. Now, you might be tempted to go ahead and start ripping off paper, but another benefit to paper piecing, sewing through the paper, is if we leave that paper in there for just a few more minutes, again, it acts like a stabilizer and keeps everything from shifting and becoming wonky. We're going to keep that paper in, and we're going to bring in that 1 strip of fabric. Whoops, that's the wrong camera, Lisa. That 1 strip of fabric, where did I put mine? That joins these 2 pieces, and it's actually the edge of our book right in the middle. See that? Now this piece is cut a little bit bigger. I like my piece to be cut bigger. You could cut it exact if you want, but this just gives you a little leeway, right? So let's turn this over. We have A1 facing up, right? So we're going to line this up. Yes, with the fabric strip laying down with the right side facing up. And we're going to bring in with A1 up at the top. We're going to line this up to the very edge, just like this. We're matching up those raw edges right there. And we're going to use the paper again, as a guide, to sew our 1/4 inch seam. So again, I like to start off the fabric, sew right on the line, and end up off the fabric over here. So let's go do that. We are still using that short stitch length, okay? Make sure that that's still set at very short. Okay, I ended up down here in the fabric bit. We're gonna come back over here. I'm gonna take this and just finger press that right on over, and we're gonna give that a press. And now we can bring in this other piece, and we're just eyeballing and matching it up, just like this. And I'm going to hold this in place, and we're going to be sewing on that line to join all 3 of these pieces. I shifted things on my way over. Let me get them back in place. There we go. We're going to bring this over and we're going to press that seam. So I'm just going to open things up just like this. And we are pressing. And see how that paper just keeps everything nice and tight. No willy wonky shifting going on with our seams. Everything stays nice and straight. So at this point, you could just take a pair of scissors and trim off any extras at the top and bottom, or you could use your rotary cutter, right? I'm just going to eyeball it and trim off the top and bottom. And now's the part where we get to pick off all of the paper. That shorter stitch length is going to really help keep those stitches from moving and shifting or maybe popping, and that the paper should come off relatively easily. See that? Now I have my handy dandy pokey tool from the Dollar Tree. It has a blunt end that sometimes I like to go in and just start working that paper a little bit. And just tear it right on out of there. See how easy that comes out? The bigger pieces. Come off just like that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and bring you along with me as I remove the paper, but I'm going to fast forward this part. All right, coming back. There we go. I'm just going to flip this right on over and just give it one more final press, just in case I ruffled anything while removing those paper bits. She is nice and flat, and look how perfectly she's lined up. Now, this is the part where you may choose to add the fusible interfacing to the back side if you want a little bit more body and control of your journal cover. So let me bring that in. And I don't think I have a pressing cloth, so what I'm going to do is actually do it in reverse. I'm going to lay my fusible interfacing with the smooth side facing down. And the bumpy side is the adhesive. That is facing up. And I'm going to lay my journal cover with the right side facing down. And I'm just going to center everything right on top, and I'm going to fuse this. Now, of course, you'll want to use any instructions for whatever kind of fusible you're using. I do have a little bit sticking out at the top and bottom, so let me find my pressing cloth because I don't want to get that on my iron. Okay, so now that I have a pressing cloth, let's turn this back over. This is the way I usually like to press it. You'll see I cut mine a little bit shorter. I usually like to press it with the right side facing down like this. And I like to use a little bit of steam. I find it just fuses a little bit quicker and a little bit stronger if I do that. So we're just treating this whole journal cover as one piece and adding that interfacing right to the back side. Then I like to just set that aside, and I like to add interfacing to the back side of my back fabric too. So the bumpy side, the adhesive, is facing down onto the back side of the back fabric, and we're going to fuse that as well. Fusing, fusing, fusing. And there we go. So at this point, we have our back fabric, the inside of our journal. We can bring in our batting and center that right on there. And then the top of our journal cover and center that. Now, I like to glue baste my layers so there's no shifting when I am quilting this, okay? So I'm going to fast forward this, but I'm going to bring you along as I do it. I'm just using some Elmer's glue stick just to glue baste these layers, and then I'm going to dry all the glue with my iron. Okay, we're gonna let that cool off. But at this point, we want to go ahead and quilt our little journal cover before we add our binding. Now there's all kinds of things you could do for the quilting. Let me show you a couple of examples. On this one, I used a decorative stitch, or this is like a hemming stitch, I think, or like an overlocking stitch right along each one of those seams. And this one I used sort of looks like a herringbone, I think that's the name of it, stitch, and stitch right along those seams. And then usually right in the middle, I do a couple lines of straight stitching just to secure this middle section. You don't have to do that. You could do all kinds of stuff. You could just do a regular straight stitch right along those seams, and that would be lovely. And I think that's what we'll do for this one. No, my camera's messing up. Okay, we're going to move over here to the sewing machine, and basically I'm doing a straight stitch in the ditch or right next to the seam, and we're going to get this journal cover quilted. Now you could do all kinds of stuff with your journal cover. I think an all over meandering would be awesome with this journal cover. I think all kinds of decorative stitches. I do think, because we're going to be opening and closing this journal cover during the use of our journal, I do think some kind of quilting is needed, but however you want to quilt it, just be creative and have fun. I'm going to bring you through. I'm going to increase the stitch length of my stitch now, and generally I like to use a stitch length of like 2.4, and yeah, I'll bring you along as I get this quilted. All right, we're going to come back and take a look at my journal cover. So you saw me walk through just stitching right next to the seams. I think that's fantastic. The stabilizer helps keep the inside of the journal nice and flat. It still has that quilty texture, but you don't see a lot of the crinkling like you do perhaps on this one. And it's going to be hard to see because the white washes out the camera, but see that? The crinkling, this is more quilt-like, right? This one's a little bit flatter and smoother. So once you have your journal cover quilted however you want to quilt yours, you're ready for the binding. Now, you will bind this just like you're binding any quilt or quilt project, mug rug, things like that. I'm going to do that off camera because I already know that this video is going to be on the longer side. So most of you know how to bind a quilt or bind smaller projects. If you don't, there are a ton of video tutorials on YouTube to help you go ahead and get your journal cover with a binding on it. And then we're ready to move on with adding the pages and getting this cover to this stage. Coming back, you're going to see that I have two journal covers. They look identical to one another and the binding is on. I'm going to show you just two different ways that you could finish this journal, although I believe that there's probably 100 different ways that you could turn this cover into a journal. So the first way I'm going to show you, we're going to create what's called a traveler's notebook using elastics. Hold on a second. Much like this one, right? It has an elastic closure that keeps your journal closed. And then it has two elastics that are run inside your journal so that you can add and remove the signatures or the papers inside of your notebook, right? The elastics just hold them in and you can slip them in and out. There's two different signatures right there. This is my favorite kind of journal because I'm always finding things that I wish I could just add to my journal, especially if we're out and about, receipts, all kinds of stuff, right? And so you can certainly do it this way, or you can sew in your pages and make them a permanently adhered to your journal. The first way I'm going to cover is adding the elastics and making this into a traveler's notebook. Let me just move that one off to the side. Now to do that, you're going to need some elastic. I ordered this one. I will link it down in the description box. This is just round elastic cording. And it comes in all different thicknesses. You might like one that's a little bit tinier, thicker than this. I like the thinner because it goes through a lot of different types of beads. And sometimes it's still a little too thick to go through some of the beads that I like to use. So I have some elastic cord. You're going to need something to punch holes through your journal cover. I'm using my Crocodile 2. It has a long neck so that I can reach right into the center. Or you can use like a grommet setter. You know, the little kits that you get and you can poke a hole with an awl and then set your grommets with the little tool. You can use one of those too. But I'm going to use this today. I have some eyelets. These are, I think, 1/8 eyelet. I think that's it. I'll let you know for sure. But it's the smaller little eyelets that we're going to set right into our journal cover. And then I have some beads of all different sorts and sizes. And some of these paper beads I made in a video a couple years ago. What I'm going to do is also in the description box is link another journal cover video in the description box for you, because I walk through these steps as well. So maybe from a different angle, it might make more sense to you. But yeah, so I'm just going to grab a little bead like this. I like adding a bead to the outside at the top right there. It's not necessary. You don't have to do it, but I like to. All right, let's go ahead and set the elastics, then we'll talk about the papers, okay? So I'm just going to take my pen. There's no exact science to this. And I'm going to mark where I want my, we're going to put 2 holes up here and 2 eyelets and 2 holes down here, one on top of each other. And I don't like to go through the binding. And then we're going to put a hole right in the center for the elastic that holds the journal cover closed. So I'm just eyeballing this. I'm going to mark a hole there and a hole here. And I'm going to come down a little over 1/4 inch and mark another hole right there. You can just see those little dots. I'm going to mark a hole here. And I'm going to mark a hole here. So then I'm going to bring in my little Crocodile, and we're punching holes. So I have to move this over. Yes, it's the 1/8 little eyelets. And I have it on the 1/8 setting. And right now all we're doing is we're punching holes that are going to go all the way through to the other side, right? So it's going to be hard for you to see exactly what I'm doing from this angle, but I'm just punching holes. Just lining up, there's a little cutter that comes down, lining that up with the little dot that I created. And it just goes right through all of those layers. And I like the Crocodile too because it has such a long neck, so you can really go deep into the journal cover. I'm going to turn this around and we're going to get these other 2 holes right down here. Okay, my holes are punched. I might have to just clip some little fuzzy bits on the back side. It's a good little cutter, but we're cutting through a couple layers of fabric, interfacing, quilt batting, and so it tends to sometimes just leave you a couple of little fuzzy bits on the back side. we want those eyelets to sit nice and flush. So I like to just trim all this extra stuff right off. There we go. Look, I added my little tag on the inside of the journal. Okay, so we're coming back to this side and we can open up our little eyelets. I'm going to change this from punching holes to setting grommets just by sliding that up. And so now there's a cube down here where you can set snaps and eyelets and all kinds of stuff. So just slide that up and now we can actually punch these little eyelets right in place. So I'm going to start by just taking my eyelet and putting it through and making sure it pokes out on the back. This is just going to reinforce that fabric for our elastic. And then squeeze. And that just sets the eyelet just like a grommet tool does, right? We're going to set this one in. I like to just make sure, it's kind of like putting an earring in, right? You want to make sure that before you try to put the back on, that the post is all the way through. And punch. And we'll do this middle one. It has been a long while since I made journals. I have really enjoyed doing these journals with you today. All right, and we have two more down here. I like to do them one at a time because once you get them pushed through all the way, I don't want it to back out and shift or move. So doing them one at a time is good for me. And one more. Oh no, I almost spilled them all. I use this crocodile for all kinds of stuff, punching holes in paper, all kinds of stuff. So there we go. That just gives a nice reinforced place to add our elastics, and you see it comes through to the back side. Okay, let me close those up before I spill them. And now let's run some elastic. So the way I measure for my elastics for adding my papers inside is I take my elastic, I just pull some off of here, and I start at the bottom, right? Match up at the bottom, and I go 1, 2 and a half. That's it. And I cut it. So let's go ahead and add this elastic for our pages. Now the way that I get started, let me make sure that I want my tag on the back side of my journal. So let's just make sure that's down there, Lisa. We have 2 eyelets up at the top, and I'm going to take my elastic and working from the inside of the journal, I'm going to thread my elastic through this bottom eyelet and come out to the front. And I like to add a little bead or a charm at the top of the outside of my journal. So this is where I'm going to find my little bead. What did I do with it? I lost it. Let me get another one. Let me find a pretty one. Finding beads. We'll just use the silver one. This is like the first one I pulled out. So I'm just going to bead that elastic right through there. or thread that elastic right through the bead. So there's our little bead. And then we're going to come inside right through that top hole, back inside the journal. So there we go. All right, so at this point we have the elastic tails just like this. I'm going to shorten one. Doesn't matter which one you're bringing down, right? But I usually do this bottom one, and I'm going to bring it down into this first hole and then back up through the very bottom hole. See that? So there's one elastic, and then I'm just going to feed everything through until it's about equal like that, right? And now we're going to pull it. It's easier for me to do it this way. We're going to tie this into like a double or triple knot. Okay, but I like to add a little bit of tension. So see how the side of the journal is just popping up? I like to add a little bit of tension because that's going to hold our papers inside our journal nice and snug. And so while it looks a little funny right this second, it's going to hold our pages in really well. And I like to tie a triple knot like that in my elastic. And see, it still does lay down flat if you just take your fingers and pull it down. I like to leave the extra tails of elastic in there for right now, because what if I want to unpick this knot and make any adjustments? All right, so let's just fold this and let's measure, or no, I don't want to fold it yet. Let's measure the elastic for the closure, because we still have that hole right there that we're going to add that elastic. So I take some elastic off, and this time I'm measuring from side to side, 1 time and a half. So for this elastic, you could use all kinds of charms, right? On this one, I did a little key. See that? Isn't that cute? There's all different kinds of charms. Ooh, sorry about that. Charms and tidbits. All kinds of different findings, buttons, snaps. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to mute that. So, what would go good with this journal? I think on this one, I'm going to add one of my paper beads. I made these quite some time ago. It's been a few years now. That kind of looks like it goes. Let's use this one. Okay, so I'm just going to take my elastic and thread it right through that bead. I'm going to draw up both elastics with the ends just like this. And we're going to thread the elastic from the outside to the inside. So we're going to put both of those elastics right through that eyelet and bring them back to the inside. Then, what I usually like to do is kind of lay my journal flat like this. And see the bead just sticking out the bottom? I'm going to set my knot with that charm or bead right at the base. And I'm going to tie a knot. But I'm not going to tie that knot very tight in case I need to make any adjustments. It's just like a preliminary knot. So let's fold this journal cover up and see how the elastic goes around. And at this point, if it goes around easily, snugly, and you don't really have to stretch that elastic too much to get it around, then go ahead and tie a couple more knots, right? But if this is too loose at this point, go ahead and shorten it up and add a couple knots then. So that's actually a really good length. I'm just going to add a couple of knots to it to make it big enough so that it's not going to come through that eyelet. And I'll do one more. Again, I don't like to cut those little threads just in case at some time I want to either shorten up or make the closure wider, right, or longer. So there we go. There's the elastics in our journal. Everything is run. Whoops. That's the top of my journal. There we go. All right. So see the little bead on the top? Isn't that cute? Okay, so the other way to add your pages would involve a little bit of hand sewing. So before we move on to that, let's talk about the pages for our book, right? So I like using all kinds of pages. I like using patterned paper, cardstock, tea stained paper, coffee stained paper, food coloring stained paper. I like using lined paper, gridded paper, all kinds of stuff, right? So I have just pulled some stuff here, right? I love paper with maps on it. You could do all lined paper if you're going to just use this taking notes. You could print off a journal kit, all kinds of stuff, right? Maybe you want to use this as a calendar, so you print off calendar pages. Maybe you want an address book. I have a whole bunch of just regular copy paper. I have some odd-shaped cut papers, just offcuts, and lots of patterned paper like that, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do, this journal has 2 elastics. You could add additional signatures, and there are videos out there for adding additional signatures with 2 elastics. If you want to add like 4 signatures, I might even show you in the video that I've tagged down in the description box. I think I do show you. So, but on this one, we're going to make 2 signatures, which is really 2 little book inserts for the inside of our journal. So the first thing I do is I just start folding some paper, okay? Let's just fold some paper in half. Folding in half. We're going to take quite a few of these sheets and fold them. And I tell you what, I'm going to bring you along as I fold these, but we're going to fast forward it, okay? Because this video is already on the longer side. Okay, once you have selected all your papers and pre-folded them, now we're going to divide these up into 2 different signatures. And I know it's all different size papers. We're just going to work with it for just a second. Let's split them up into 2 different little booklets. Okay, I've sorted and separated all of the pages, right? So here's a big assortment of pages for the first insert and for the second. Now I'm going to go through and let's figure out first. Yeah, let's go ahead and stack these and actually put all of our pages together, and then we'll trim everything up. How's that sound? I think I want the purple to be on the outside of this signature, so I'm just going to open it up. And I'm going to line all my pages up to here, no matter how tall they are. Okay, I realized I was partway off the camera. So I've just lined them up and they're all lined up to this raw edge right here, right? So let's just tap them down. And I think it'll be easier for you to see this way, right? Let's bring in our journal, and at this point we can cut off the length of everything that is too big, right? So I like for my pages to rest just inside that binding, just a little bit, not exactly to the edge, but just inside. And you can cut your pages to come exactly to the edge if you like. I like my pages just to fall in there. So what I'm going to do is come down here and just eyeball it and mark it a little bit shorter like that. There's a little tiny mark right there. And now you can use your rotary cutter and a ruler and just trim off everything this way, or you can use a paper cutter, an X-Acto knife, whatever easiest for you. I'm going to go ahead and just add a couple of clips so that everything stays together. In the order that I want it to stay. And I'm going to use my paper cutter and just cut everything right off of there. I like to save these little off bits because they make great little tucks, pockets, all kinds of little things for the inside of your journal. So I like to save that. So here is the length trimmed up to fit just inside that way. Now before I cut off what needs to be cut off from the sides, I'm gonna go ahead and poke a couple of holes there and actually secure this signature with some thread, okay? Because I like my pages to stay sort of together. You don't have to do this part, and if you don't do this part, it's easier to add things inside of your booklets. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take a little pokey tool and see that folded line right there? I'm just going to poke my awl, or a little pokey tool, right through there, creating a hole. And you can see I'm not measuring or anything. Just creating a little hole right in that fold. Then I'm going to take a needle and some thread. You could use DMC thread. I like it to be a thicker thread. So like a DMC with all 5 or 6 strands, right? A full strand, or maybe some floss. Like today I'm using an 8-weight Wonderfil Pearl Cotton. Just a thicker kind of thread is what I like to use. I'm going to cut some off. I'm going to get this needle threaded. I believe this is a size 24 chenille needle for my hand sewing stuff. Right? I'm just going to take that through. I'm not even putting a knot at the end. And I'm going to start from the inside of the booklet to the outside And because we've poked those holes in there, it's a lot easier to run your needle through. We're going to flip this over and we're going inside that hole there. Now my stuff might have shifted a little bit. Usually I like to add some binding clips top and bottom to keep stuff from shifting. Let's make that hole a little bigger. A regular awl might be really helpful too. I just don't know where mine is. Okay, there we go. All right. So now we'll just draw that thread up. Not too tight, but nice and snug. And we're going to tie like a triple knot. You could add some beads or charms to this thread and just let it hang down like that out of the bottom of your journal. That's super cute. Today I'm just going to cut those threads right off. Okay, so we can remove the little binding clips, and now the pages are nice and snug sewn together, right? And I'm going to take my little Dollar Tree tool and really just kind of burnish that fold so that it lays a little bit flatter. See that? Now we know that looking at this signature, this little booklet is going to be too wide for our journal. So let's just put it in there and measure out like that. So we know that we're going to be trimming some of the width off as well. And you could make this as thin little booklets as you want, or you could bring it right to the edge. I like for mine to fall just inside the edge of the cover. So I'm just going to line it up here. And again, I'm eyeballing it. There's the edge of my cover. And I want mine to fall just inside. So I'm just marking it with a little pin like that. Again, you could take a ruler, an X-Acto knife, and start trimming all of the pages. I'm going to try and use my paper cutter. It's a little bit on the thicker side. We'll see if it works. Nope, too thick. It's too thick, Lisa. I already knew that. So I'm gonna go find myself like a metal ruler if I can find mine, and an X-Acto knife. I will be right back. Okay, so I can tell I haven't made journals in a long time. Since we've moved, I can't find half of my stuff. My big awl is missing, my metal ruler is missing, my X-Acto knife is missing. So I'm going to use this ruler, even though I really don't like to use it with razor blades. And I can't find my X-Acto knife, so I'm using this little box cutter. It's probably from the Dollar Tree. So I'm just going to line it up to the edge, and we're going to just start shaving off little bits until I cut all of the pages. Okay, so now all of my pages are exactly the same width, right? And I have all kinds of cool, fun pages in here. Yeah, so this little booklet is done. Let's go ahead and slide this one in. So just open it right to the middle where our little threads are tied. And then I'm going to take my first elastic and just slide them right on in there. Right to the middle. And then see how the elastic holds that book right in there. Now I'm actually going to take this out and use this to measure my other booklet because I still have to fold and cut and tie those and to make the second book that's going to go in here. So yeah, I think when I come back, I'll have the second booklet tied and ready to slide in. Okay. Okay, I've successfully made a huge mess over here. But I have my two inserts for this first journal, right? They're exactly the same size. And I just used my first one to measure for the second. So we're going to just open these up. I'm going to take my first elastic and the thread that signature through there. And then we have the second elastic. I'm going to open up this one and thread that through there. And that elastic will hold in that cover or that booklet, right? And so there we go. We have our two inserts and our cover just folds together like this. And we can pull that elastic around and just hold our journal closed. I do think this could be a tight bit tighter, but maybe I'll make that adjustment down the road. So there we go. Our pages just fall right within there. And I love it. So you can open it up, use all of your pages. When this particular book gets used up, you can make another one and take this one out and add another one. If you have receipts, you can put them through the elastic there. All kinds of things you can do with this. I like putting laces and trims on the edges of my papers. I like adding tabs and bookmarks and pockets. Wow, it's been so long since I've actually just spent some real time like embellishing a journal. And so that sounds like a lot of fun. So there's the first way that I'm going to show you how to finish up this journal, right? The second way is a little less labor intensive. You're going to go ahead and make your two booklets just like we did before. So let me do that with some more paper and we'll come back. So I just finished creating the next two sets of inserts for this second journal. So let me just bring you up to speed of what I've done. I have already tied together my two booklets, right? So on these two booklets, because we're attaching them actually sewn into the journal, I only did a short little tie just like this in the middle of each one of my books. That's going to securely hold my pages together while I'm working with them and hold the pages within this booklet as well. So I want you to notice what I've done is I've poked two holes towards the top and bottom just like this. Now I didn't measure them out, I just eyeballed them on the first set, right? And then once I had these 4 holes poked, I set this insert inside this one and poked through the same 4 holes to mark my placement for these holes, and then poked all the way through on this second set. So these 4 holes are exactly in the same place on both of these inserts. You can just see them just right there and there. And these are the holes that we're going to use to actually sew these booklets into our journal cover. So here is my journal cover. They're going to fit just inside here like that. Just like that, right inside. So what we can do, I haven't done one like this in a long time. Let me just take off some thread. I'm going to try and use a long piece of thread so we only have to thread this needle one time, right? Because we have already been here for like half a day together. I've actually been making this video since this morning and it is now 4:51. Okay, let me get this needle threaded. And again, I'm not going to tie any knot in my thread. And I am just going to eyeball this in the middle here. So I'm going to open up to where the holes are, the center of my book, and I'm going to go in through this first hole. And let me just find where I want to place this. Just like that. I'm just holding that book in place, opening it up, and right through that bottom hole, and right through to the outside of my journal. I'm going to leave a little thread tail so I can tie a knot. See that? I'm going to try not to get any knots. Let me use this just to help keep this in place. There we go. I'm going to open this up and I'm just going to eyeball from the outside back through into the cover. See that? And then back into the middle of this book. It's a little awkward to get this on camera. There we go. All right, I'm going to pull this really tight and I'm going to tie a knot. And now I can cut this thread. And now move down here and do the same exact thing. So I'm going to fast forward as I do this one. Okay, so just like that, we've tied this signature right inside of our book. Now if you look, you'll see a little stitch there and a little stitch there, but I used a thread that kind of coordinates with the binding of my book, so you really don't too much see it. But you could also run a bead on these stitches here because they're quite, well, I say long, however long you make them. You could run a bead on one or both of these stitches as well. So that book is permanently sewn into our journal cover. And then we're just going to repeat the steps with this one. Now this one will just line up to that other book, just like that. I'm just going to clip this in place so it doesn't shift around and move. And we're just repeating these steps. On the second one, I think it's easier because the other book is kind of blocking your view. If you don't maybe tie this top one yet so that you can kind of pull this one out a little bit, I think you'll have an easier time seeing what you're doing. Yeah, that was a lot easier. So I'm just going to tie these two. Nice and tight. I like doing a triple knot. It has been a lot of fun making these journals with you. All right, let me trim these threads. And now let's talk about ways to add a closure to this, right? Because our signatures are now sewn in. They're permanently sewn into our cover. They're not going to fall out. There's all different kinds of ways that you could keep this journal closed when you're not using it, right? The simplest way for me is to bring along a binding clip. Now, I use binding clips all the time with my journals, and I add a little elastic here and make it into a pin holder. There's all kinds of YouTube videos showing you how to do that. And if you get into the journaling, making videos and the embellishing and all that stuff, I hope you have some free time, because you could just watch and watch and watch all of these videos. But the easiest way is to add a little binding clip like this, right? And so when you're using the journal, you can put the binding clip on your pages, all kinds of stuff. That would be the easiest way. But you could also bring in some little snaps, right? And you could make a little fabric tab and sew that right into where you've added your binding. You could do it even after your binding is on, right? Just make yourself a finished little fabric piece and sew it right where that binding stitch is. And that will hold that tab in, and then it could pull over and you can add a snap to your cover and it would pull over and snap. You could do that. You could sew in some ribbon and use that and tie your journal closed. Wow, there's all kinds of stuff. You could even make yourself an elastic that just slides on and slides off when you're not using it. All kinds of stuff. So this is how I would sew in permanently the 2 books. You could add more books than that, right? Yeah, I hope you have fun with this. I hope you make some of these journals. And if you do, I'd love to see them. You can share pictures over on the Creative Crew with me. It would be fun to see what you make and who you make them for. Yeah, I'd love to hear all about it. I'm so sorry this video was so long, y'all, but it was a lot of information and it was all crammed in there. I reckon I will see you on Friday when we do our tutorial for applique. All right, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Make some journals, have some fun. Bye.